everybody. And for all those who've been here with us, welcome back to the final session of the day. My name is Aekta Kapoor. I'm the founder and editor of eShe, and I'm also the founder of South Asia Union. What you're watching is the South Asia Union Summit led by women. And this is the last session of the day. It's titled Women Who Dare, Single Motherhood, Freedom and Fearlessness. And I'm very, very excited to introduce our panel of speakers today. They've all been single moms, and they're going to be talking about making fearless choices, especially as single moms, and the challenges that it comes with in the South Asian context, and how different things have become, from the early days till now, and if things have changed. Now, this conversation is really relevant today, especially after an Indian member of parliament was lambasted on both mainstream and social media for having had her baby out of wedlock. And then another single mother who was an actor, she's not been able to get her passport for her adopted child. So, these issues are pretty relevant till today. We're going to discuss this and more with our panelists. I'm extremely lucky to have with us here today Dolly Thakore, an award winning Indian theatre actress and casting director based in Mumbai. Hello, Dolly. So happy to have you here with us.
Hi, Ekta. I'd like to say I know I'm referred to as an actor most of the time, but I'm in communications. I was one of the first news readers. I've been in All India radio and television, and that is
Yeah,
what has been my career: communications and public relations. Not so, and acting came accidentally, and of course,
yeah.
I'm not balking at the news that I am an actor too, but I'm known more for my voice and my communications. So,
Absolutely. In fact, that's what I was just going to share with the audience, that you were trained in radio and television with BBC London, and you are considered one of the leading newscasters and television hosts of your time. In fact, many of us remember
20
Dolly as,
20 years
yes,
ago, ladies,
20
20
years
years
ago.
ago.
But many of us still remember you as the new English newsreader for Mumbai Doordarshan at 8 p.m. And of course, you did spend a lot of your life on stage. You have a son, Kwasar Padamsi, with fellow stage actor and producer Alec Padamsi.
Wasa
Yeah.
Thakur Padamsi, please.
Okay. All right. And he also works in theater. And of course, you've now written a book titled Regrets None, which is about your life's unconventional experiences. I'm very happy to have you here, and we're going to talk more about these experiences today. Our second panelist, Diep Saeeda, is a peace activist, and I'm delighted to have you as well. Hello, Deep.
Thank you, Ekta. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Deep is an anti nuclear campaigner in Lahore. She's a founding director of the Institute of Peace and Secular Studies, IPSS, a volunteer based community organization that was established to counter religious extremism, promote and defend the rights of minorities, and help foster friendly relations between Pakistan and its neighboring countries. She has won numerous awards for her work, and she continues with her peace activism. A single mother of three daughters, she's been targeted several times for her outspoken views. She was abducted, beaten up by religious extremists, and more recently has been subject to malware attacks on her computer. So, thank you, Deep, for being with us today. And we're going to talk
Thank,
more about your
thank you.
fearlessness and the idea of freedom. And
Thank you.
finally, of course, we have Samra Zafar. Samra, delighted to have you here. Samra is an award winning Pakistani Canadian motivational speaker, best selling author, and educator for equity, mental health, and human rights. Her book, A Good Wife Escaping the Life I Never Chose, is based on her journey of escaping an abusive child marriage to pursue her education, and it really shed light on gender based oppression, even in the developed world. It was one of CBC's best books of 2019 and is now being adapted to a premium TV series. So thank you, Samra, for being here. And
Thank
I
you
would
so
like
much.
to now start my questions with Dolly. Dolly, you've made very unconventional choices way back in 1978, in fact, to have a child outside of marriage. So could you please share your journey and what led you to make this choice?
I wanted to be a complete woman, and it didn't matter what anybody dictated. Was in a living relationship with somebody, and I said, well, if I can do that, and that was accepted and acknowledged by everybody. And I said, well, now I want to have the experience of being pregnant and carrying a child and delivering a child. So that was my motivation for having a child.
Yeah, and
And I
it was a
must say,
pretty, yeah.
I've been very lucky that nobody has discriminated against me. They've all accepted it. Um, how much luckier can a woman get?
But it was an unconventional choice, and you're saying it in a very matter of fact way, but I'm sure it must have taken a lot to take that kind of a decision.
Not at all. I was. I didn't have to. I was supported by everybody, and I
Okay.
went around. I mean, I used to appear on TV. 8 months pregnant, I was reading the news. I was
Wow.
comparing a radio program that took me to 11 cities in India, and I used to go with my pregnancy. And even after the child was born, the hotel rooms where I used to be draped with nappies and things, because in those days there were no throwaway napkins. What are they called these days?
Diapers.
Disposable diapers. Disposable. There were no disposable diapers. So I must say, I've been very fortunate, and I've had the support of everybody. I'm not saying that they were applauding and clapping hands and things. I'm sure within themselves, some of them may have gossiped or talked about it. But I think a lot of it depended on the courage that you have in yourself, and how much power and confidence you show yourself. And fortunately, also, that the men in my life were as broad minded as I was. So I had no problems there.
So I'll come to Deep with a similar question. Deep, though your work as a peace activist has made more headlines and you were often invited to talks and forums to share your experiences, not many people know about your personal journey as a single mother. Would you like to share something about that?
Thank you, Ekta. I have an issue. There is distortion in the voice. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, great. So it's very important to mention that I belong to a, a middle class, very backward family. My mother was the first woman who who graduated and went to other city and boarding house. It is very backward area where I belong, and comparatively in Pakistan, Punjab is more conservative as compared to other.
Oh, it looks like Deep's connection has gone off. Okay, I'll come to you, Samra, and maybe we can come back to Deep later on. So your experience, of course, you're of a different generation and your experience has been different. But can you also tell us about your journey and how you went from a girl from a very traditional South Asian, value systems to being a single mother out of choice, and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, so you said the key word here, Ekta, which is choice, and I truly believe that a woman's freedom and her honor lies in her freedom of choice. So, sadly, though, my choice was taken away from me at the age of 16 when I was forced into marriage to a man who was much older than me, who lived in this faraway country called Canada, and I was shipped off there as his teen bride, as his child bride, and I became a teenage mom and went through over a decade of abuse and violence and oppression. Not allowed to go back to school, not allowed to finish my education, have a career, or any of those things. And this was all happening while I was living in Canada. So that goes to show that violence against women and gender-based oppression and these kinds of things are not just limited to the South Asian subcontinent or other parts of the world. These happen everywhere, even in so-called very feminist and progressive countries. So it's a very universal issue. And Well, for me, my biggest thing was education, and that was something I was not willing to give up on um, for any reason. So I just kept pushing and pursuing my education, finished my high school through distance learning, then started university, and that's where I started regaining my confidence and learning about my rights, and eventually gained the courage to walk out my marriage. But the main factor that prompted me and motivated me to leave that marriage was about my daughters. So I have two daughters, and I did not want them to grow up thinking that the abuse that their father was inflicting on me was normal. I didn't want them to grow up thinking that this is how women are supposed to be treated for any reason, and I didn't want them to normalize it and accept it in their own lives as well, because that's how the generational cycle of abuse continues. Because kids who grow up watching it will normalize it, and then they will inflict it or accept it in their own lives, and it just goes on and on. So at that point, really, my choice was driven by the determination to break that cycle and not create that similar kind of life for my daughters as I had had. And by then there was like no looking back after that, because I knew that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's it's a very inspiring story, and we'll just come back to that. Deep is now back. So Deep, would you like to continue where you left off?
Yeah, I'm having some internet problem. I don't know if you can hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you and see
Yeah,
you as well.
yeah. So I was saying that it is very important. The probably in the privileged class, single motherhood is not probably is something uh, disliked, but the after my marriage,
No, I
Oh no,
think
we've
Deep is
lost her
facing
again.
some issues. Yeah, yeah. I think there are some issues happening there with the internet. So Dolly, I'll come to you now. You in your book, you've been very outright and very honest about your life and choices. And in fact, we were discussing the other day that you said you've lived your life very openly. Why do you think it's important for more women to live their truth and be honest about their challenges and their choices?
It's not right for me to go on blowing my own trumpet and saying how strong I was, I made the decisions and I had no objection. And but like I think it was Deep who started to say that I also come from a very middle class and a backward family, in the sense that they are not university educated, they are not exposed to the Western style of education, etc. But I think it was because of the schools I went to. There were only, the two women that I have dedicated my book to, and I think I owe my life to. One is my grandmother, who was a nurse. And so it wasn't as if she'd been to university or exposed to Western education. She didn't speak or write English at all. They wrote in Urdu and they read Urdu. Similarly, my aunt, her youngest daughter, who is today 97 years old, and she's still alive and she's still with me. She was the only educated one who went to university, and she went to Lahore to do her teacher's training, but she taught Hindi. And I must say, she has been a terrific example. And she's the one who encouraged us. She's the one who instilled the love for university and learning and college and things but only in me, not in my other children. And I'm the eldest, not in my other brothers and sisters. But I'm the eldest. But I lived with them for the first 6 years of my life. And so it was instilled into you, and it has stayed. And I've continued to do that. My mother, I'm sure, would have loved me to have sat home and made chapatis and got married to anyone of her choice. But I had a bit of a obstinate and an independent and a determined mind. And I continue to pursue the things that I did. And because I came in the first three. I never came first, but I was always in the first three in the class. I was encouraged. You know, they didn't say, "Hey, fail ho jati hai, isko ghar pe rakho, iski shadi kar degi." You know, I didn't get that kind of an attitude from them. Um, and I hope that I've set an example to a lot of young women today. And all my college friends at that time came from fairly educated, exposed, well to do families, while we didn't. We were very middle class. And I think most of us have had that background of coming from middle class homes. But I think a little bit of that from whoever it runs off from gives you the courage to then say your piece, stand up on your own 2 feet. As I said, I owe it to my aunt. She's not married. She has looked after her parents and her brother, who was didn't study, and she looked after all his family, etc. But look how the courage that she's given me. And all of you are asking me questions of how did I achieve what I have. But it's not that I stood there waving flags or done march pasts or taken processions out, but it's just come. So it's, I would say, it's built in you. It's how much courage you have in yourself. And luckily, my family, my parents, they didn't reject me. They didn't condemn me. They didn't marry me off like some of you have been married off early in age. And, like Samra was saying, in her childhood, she was a teenage bride. I didn't have to face those kind of things. And I know a lot of girls in my school and college and in my circle have faced the same kind of things. And they don't have the courage that I have. So it's very difficult for me to say where and how I've acquired it. But it's an individual thing and have it acquired. I mean, look at Deep. She's a nuclear scientist. Am I correct, Deep, where that's concerned?
She's an
And
activist. She's an anti-nuclear weapons
well,
activist.
activist. So I mean, look where she's gone, and she's not had the emotional strength provided to her by others. I mean, so hats off, and I touch her feet for what she has done and achieved.
Deep, would you like to share? You're back now? Would you like to continue with your journey?
I'm sorry about this internet. I don't know what's wrong. Almost every day we are on Zoom meeting. It never happened, but I and there is no electricity, and I'm afraid my computer can be dead anytime. But
Okay, okay. Maybe
I'm very
that's the
sorry.
problem. Yeah. But
So
we
I was
can,
saying that, yeah.
yeah.
So I was telling you that I was 20 when I got married, and it was arranged marriage. I never met the gentleman with whom I was getting married. And when I was 21, I had my daughter. Immediately after marriage, I realized that it is difficult to different people. But then, because it was just immediately after my graduation, so I have not started any work, or I was not a working woman, just taking care of. Then after 2 years, have an other daughter, and then three daughters. So I was almost caught up in the household task, and at the same time I was upset, and I felt like I am in jail or something, like suffocated, frustrated. And but even I was not single. I was with my husband, but I realized the kind of work I was doing. It was like single parent, because each and everything, it's all the household task I was doing, and but then when I discussed my dissatisfaction with my mother, and there was no support, and they were of the view that I have the best husband in the world. So uh, after 18 years of marriage, I decided that uh, I should just free myself. But it was quite difficult because I was not a working woman taking care of three daughters and doing my activism and volunteer work. Very difficult. But the freedom, uh, I think, is when you realize that you are free, people cannot control your voice, or it was sense of independence. It's I realized that it was I should have done it long ago. But that's it. I never spoke about this because I believe this is very I'm known as an activist and fighting with the extremist groups and this state. This is very personal, but I thought I should talk about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, this is a side of your life people
I will
don't know
not
about. They see the public and the political side of it.
being a single parent is very difficult in my part of place where I'm living in Pakistan and Punjab. And particularly when you belong to middle class and your family doesn't support you.
Sorry, I think that the connection is very poor there. But what Deep was saying is that she had to face a lot of issues. She had to face a lot of challenges as a single mother in her part of the world. It's very difficult for her to take that decision after 18 years. She left with her three children, with her three daughters, and it took a lot of courage to do that. Let me see if her connection is working again. Uh, are you here, Deep? Yeah, we can see you, but I think we're not able to
I
hear
apologize
you.
for this. And I'm really sorry. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. But at the same time, I would like Samra and Dolly to speak because they are, their internet is fine, and so we can hear them because my internet is disconnected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 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 It
Samra,
keeps
I would love to
disconnecting.
read
Yeah.
your
Yeah. Yes, Samra. In fact, I was going to ask you now that having lived in three different countries, Pakistan, UAE, and Canada, what do you think is required from society as a whole to ensure that women feel free and safe? Since we're talking about the topic of freedom, what does it take for a woman to feel free and safe? Sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
That would be helpful. Okay, that's better. So
Yeah.
I think, when it comes to real freedom, when it comes to, your autonomy, I think there's two worlds that we need to be aware of. One is your internal world, and then the external world. And I think if let's talk about the internal world first. That's your thoughts, that's your ideas, that's your values, and oftentimes, when especially when we're growing up as young girls, our that internal world of ours is very much influenced by what we see around us, because that shapes who we are. So if we are seeing patriarchy, if we are seeing that a power imbalance in our family where the dad is the head of the household and the mom is the subjugated submissive one, if we are seeing domestic abuse being justified in the community, yes, it is a phoenix. And when we see a lot of the abuse and things like that being justified, when we see oppression being justified, even things like, jab ladki paida hoti hai to people are like, when a girl is born, they in Urdu they say Allah miya iske naseeb achhe kare, which is like, oh, may she get a good a good kismat, or a good destiny, which in
A good
turn
husband.
a good husband, it means a good husband, really. And when a boy is born, then, oh, mera beta engineer banega, doctor banega, right? Like, my son will be an an engineer, doctor, whatever, like ambitious. But a girl is born, oh, the whole thing is may she get a good husband. So like those things start from such a young age, and growing up, I always felt like I was living in a very confused world, because on one hand, I was being encouraged to study and be a top student, and on the other hand, I was always told that, oh, don't, give her some medicine so she doesn't grow so tall. How will we find a guy for her? Or oh, she's so fair skinned. This liye to aaram se ladka mil jayega, right? Like those kinds of things. You hear that, and a girl will basically grow up believing that her ultimate destiny and her ultimate purpose is to serve a man, right? And that's how the internal world is formed. And then when a girl grows into a woman, and let's say she does have that sort of courage to get away from it, like and not all women do, but I think it's all inside of us, but not all of us are able to find it and utilize it, sadly. So the women that do that, they are then subjugated and ridiculed and oppressed, because not just by men, but even by women. Like most of the backlash that I faced is from women. My mom, my mother-in-law, like others, aunts and cousins and things in my family and in the community, in the neighborhood, even in Toronto. And the way I've looked at it now is like the way I look at it, instead of taking it personally, I realize that, if a woman has lived all her life believing that she's not equal, and she has tolerated all kinds of abuse and oppression because of that belief. So when she looks at a woman like me who's telling her that she's equal, that's a very hard pill to swallow. That means for her, she has to admit that she's been living her life based on a lie. And that is a really hard pill to swallow. So a lot of times women will lash out at other women who reflect to them maybe some of the double standards that they've been living by, because they may be afraid for whatever reason to step out of the comfort zone and to be able to change their internal world. So I think, to your question, what needs to change? I think change needs to happen on so many levels. Change needs to happen on a mindset level. Change needs to happen on a dialogue level. Like what kind of things are we saying? We think, oh, that a girl gets rejected by a marriage proposal, by a rishta, that it's no big deal. But it takes such a toll on the girl's self-esteem if she's getting rejected for things that she has no control over, like her looks or her skin color or her height and things like that. So what kind of standards are we teaching our girls? We need to really evaluate and be mindful of that kind of dialogue in our society. And how are we treating women who are daring to walk away from all of that? Are we ridiculing them, or are we supporting them? Are we shunning them and shaming them, or are we lifting them up? And those are questions we all need to ask. And I think as women, we need to do a much better job of supporting each other, because if we don't support each other, how can we expect the men to support us? But then on the other hand, we also need men who are allies and who are those strong figures who are going to challenge patriarchy, because a lot of men will not listen to women, but they will listen to other men. So I think it has to be a very multi-pronged approach. And I think at every level, things need to happen on an individual level, on a community level, on a family level, and on a societal level, and on a political level as well, on a nation and universal level, that things need to be called out and brushed and brought out from under the rug and talked about, because silence only helps the oppressor. And there is no honor in silence. A woman's honor is defined and should be defined only and solely by her individuality, her dreams and goals, who she is as a person, her freedom, her choices, and that's it. Not by her clothing style or her marital status or her ability to bear children or her divorcee or not, or any of that, or her age or her looks. Like that, like it just makes me cringe, how a woman is everyone's honor, aurat har ki izzat hoti hai, and a woman holds everyone's honor in her hands, but she's never honored for who she is. And that is what needs to change on a very fundamental level.
Absolutely, that's a very powerful point that you just made there, and I'm just absolutely zapped how similar things are in both our sides of the world, in yours as well as mine. I mean, these values are still very much in place. Girls are judged entirely on their beauty from the day that they're small children. Their skin color and their overall looks becomes the most important defining characteristic of that child, even if she may have several other talents and skills. but she's going to be judged on her looks. Why? Because someday it's those looks that are going to, get her a good husband. So that becomes like the primary, everybody's focus is
Exactly.
on her
And
looks and her
and you know what
honor.
happens? And when a woman leaves that kind of patriarchy or the marital sort of
Mm,
arrangement, like gets divorced or becomes a single mother or any of that, like she's constantly reminded of that she's a failure. Like my brother-in-law called me. Like so here I was, I left my marriage. I went to university as a single mother. I was working 5 jobs at a time, part-time jobs and raising my children handedly and pursuing full time university. And I graduated as the top student in the entire University of Toronto, which is the top university in Canada. I was a 17-time scholarship winner. I finished my master's on full paid scholarship, and now I'm becoming a doctor. And even, after all, and I've been named as the one of the top 100 most powerful women in Canada, and I've won numerous awards. My own brother in law calls me and says, "What's the point of you winning all these awards if you failed at the real purpose of being a woman?" So this is what needs to change, because a woman's
yeah,
purpose is not to serve men and to serve community and to be selfless as if like ourselves don't even matter. Like a woman's purpose is what she defines it to be. It's she's a
absolutely.
complete woman when she is a girl. When a girl is born, she is a complete individual in herself. She doesn't need to be someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's anything. She herself as an entity is complete. And until and unless we acknowledge that as a society, we're not going to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. In that sense, Dolly, would you like to add your thoughts on this? Because you have really been, you've been like a torchbearer for women in that sense, that you've made your own choice and you've really stuck by it.
But I would also like to say, adding to what Samra has said, that you have to fight for it. It doesn't come automatically. Nobody offers it to you on a plate. And I mean, I was constantly being brought up by log kya kahenge, in what I wore or what I said or what I did or where I went. It was always log kya kahenge within the family itself. So, but um, perhaps I was one of the bolder ones to say to hell with the log, and I went and did what I did. But then the things I did, I was involved in debates and elocution and drama and, doing things outside the home. I didn't sit at home making chapatis because the father was coming home or the children were coming home. That wasn't expected of me. I'm sure my mother would have loved me to have done that, but I didn't. And so it gave me courage to face the world and to say and articulate what my thoughts were. In all the debates and declamations and elocution that I took part in, they were all to do with freedom and education of women and, equality, topics of that kind. And that automatically changes your own mindset and your own thinking process. So, and it's amazing how people with like minded views then begin to gravitate towards you and give you courage, you know.
Hmm.
Um,
What is
the
your idea of what is Dolly? What is your idea of freedom, and how long do you think it will take for South Asian women to experience it?
Look, the fact that I'm hearing Samra and Deep, and look what they've achieved in spite of their inhibited backgrounds and homes and having their hands tied almost. And look how much they've achieved. And that is the future of women. And we can see that. I mean, there are women generals today, there are women commanders of ships, there are women. Look at Kamala Harris, she's become the vice president of America. I mean, not even of a small little country or our own little third world. So there is a future, but you have to have the courage. You have to believe in yourself and be honest with yourself. And I think that's where when other people begin to respect you and accept you for what you are.
Right. And interestingly, you were born in pre-partition India. You were born in the northwest frontier province of a district called
I was
Kohat.
born in Kohat.
Kohat.
Look, I could go on for hours and hours about my life and where I've been and who I've met and what has happened to me. But my father was in the Air Force. We left. I was born in Kohat, but we left Kohat when I was 1 month old, and
Mm.
I went
Mm.
back to and that was in 1943. For you
Mm.
guys, it's another generation altogether. It's a different world. But it was 1943, and I went back there in 2004,
Yeah.
and I was very lucky that I was able to visit all the places that I wanted. A story that I would like to share with you is, I'm sure people from India and Pakistan are aware that if you want to visit either country, you get and you put in one place in your passport, that's the only place that you can visit. You're given a visa or an entry permit only for that one particular place. The same thing happened to me. I was invited to the Lahore Cricket Festival that they were having. India Pakistan were playing for the first time after many years in 2004. And so when I got that invitation, I said, "My God, Pakistan! I've always wanted to go to Pakistan." And but I said, I don't want to go only to Lahore. I want to go to Islamabad, Karachi, Kohat, and Lahore. And as it happened, the passport came back from Delhi stamped only for Lahore. And I was going to Delhi the following week. So I took my passport and I went along. And at a Mehdi Hassan concert, which I'm sure is a name that you all may be familiar with, at the Ashoka Hotel in Delhi, I was sitting next to the High Commissioner, the Pakistan High Commissioner. And I turned to him and I said, "Listen, I'm going to Pakistan. I was born in Kohat and I want to go to Pakistan, but I want a visa for all those places, all these other places." So he said, "Come and see me at the High Commission tomorrow." So the next morning, I was only in Delhi for 3 days. I live in Mumbai. So I went to the Pakistan High Commission, and at the gates, they asked me what I wanted. I told them where I wanted to go and who I wanted to meet. I was ushered in, and the security guy there, the immigration guy, said, "Why do you want to go to Pakistan, to Kohat?" And I said, "Because I was born there." And he said, "So was I." And before I knew it, he stamped my passport for all the places. And I
Wow.
spent my 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Pakistan, and I have the most wonderful memories of it. Those wonderful memories.
What do you, when you look back now at that trip and when you look back at your own journey, how do you feel in terms of, how having these boundaries and the way that the two governments are like, constantly we've become conflict
It
nations,
saddens my
Yeah.
heart. It
Mm.
makes my heart bleed because we look alike, we speak the same language, we have the same choice in foods, we have the same values, social values, also in terms of nudity or sexuality. And, I mean, so we're very similar, and it's so sad that one bloody line divides the two countries. And in fact, what was so beautiful that I went to a shopping center in Karachi, and the guy said, I asked for something, and I ran short of, I think, 1,500 rupees or 2,000 rupees. And I said, "मैं ये नहीं लूंगी, मैं ये नहीं." He turned around and said, "अब हम लोग के बीच में बॉर्डर्स खुल गए हैं, आप फिर आएंगी, आप ये लेके जाइए." He wouldn't take money from me, and he gave me those things. I mean, that kind of generosity and warmth and acceptance actually only exists amongst an Indian soul and a Pakistani soul. When I include the Pakistani in the Indian, I'm going to be hated for it from lots of other people, but that's what it is. And
Yeah.
they accept you, and that's what it was. You
Yeah.
didn't feel the difference. You didn't. I had such a wonderful time there. I
Yeah.
went to a opening of a school because at that time music dance was just being reintroduced to Pakistan after Ziaul Haq, and I attended this concert, and there the Pakistani children sang a very popular Hindi song, and the Indian kids all applauded and said "Shabbe Khair," and it
Yeah.
it still makes my hair stand on edge when I think about it. And I feel so
Yeah.
sorry that what these politicians, for personal gains, for whatever, are breaking us up and giving us ideas and destroying us from being people that can accept and live together.
Yes,
There is
absolutely. And in
really
fact,
no.
just hearing Samra and Deep, you'd think that this could be anywhere in India. It's the similar stories and the similar issues. Samra, coming to you, I would be interested in knowing what is your idea of freedom, and secondly, you have exemplified the idea of fearlessness through your actions and your choices. So, what is the message that you want to give other women?
That's a great question, Ekta. Thank you. And freedom, like I said before, for me is about freedom of choice and freedom of individuality. When a woman is able to express and be herself and to live the way she wants, pursue her dreams and opportunities without any fear of backlash, when she's able to dress the way she wants without any fear of sexual harassment or any of that, that is when she's truly, clearly free. And I think everyone, regardless of gender, deserves that freedom to be who they are and be accepted and respected for their life choices and their values and morals. However, controversial they may be in others' eyes, we can disagree. We can choose to have different morals, but that doesn't mean that we ridicule people who are different than us in any way, shape, or form. And then coming to fearlessness, actually, I'm not a big fan of the word fearless because fearless means that you live without fear, and that is not realistic. Fear is a very, very normal part of our human emotion spectrum. Fear is very natural. Fear is even healthy. Fear keeps us away from doing things that could harm us potentially or hurt us. Fear keeps us away from going into the middle of a forest, which is infested by animals who will eat us alive or something like that. Fear is what holds us back from doing a lot of things that would hurt us. So fear is a very healthy emotion, and if it's not something, the word fearless almost gives the impression and connotation that fear is something bad, and if you're feeling fear, then you're weak or you're somehow not brave enough or something. So, and that's a very, I think it's a very negative and a very unnatural and unhealthy way to look at fear. So when it comes to, I love the words courage and bravery instead. And when it comes to courage and bravery, those things are not the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I'm terrified of this choice. I'm terrified of what the future may look like, and the uncertainty is scary, but I believe in it strongly. And I am still going to move forward with the faith that everything will work out eventually. That is what courage is. So when I left my marriage, I wasn't fearless. I was terrified, but I was courageous because even despite the fear, I had the power to move forward and the courage to move forward within me. So when it comes to fear, we cannot choose whether we feel fear or not. Feelings, we cannot never choose our feelings. Feelings are there. Feelings are valid and they're natural. But what we can choose, what is in our power, is that whether we're going to allow that fear to hold us back or to push us forward. And those are the choices that make or break our lives, that make or break our choices and our our structure and our future and our present. So if when I was leaving my marriage, I was terrified. I was terrified of family backlash and cultural stigma and the shame and whether I'll find someone ever or not, or the sexual harassment that I also faced when I left, or the vitriol and the hate. Even the uncertainty. I was living in poverty. I was almost homeless. I was, like I said, working multiple minimum wage jobs on campus just to make ends meet and put food on the table for my children. Yes, it was a very, very scary time, but I had that choice. Am I going to succumb to this fear and stay in my marriage? Or am I going to believe that even if there is a tiny chance that I can make it and the future will look better, am I going to take that chance or not? And I chose to take that chance. And I'm really, really glad that I did. Because yes, it wasn't easy, but the life that I have built today, I would never have known how gloriously amazing my life could have been. So, so again, coming back to, fear, and even when I started sharing my story publicly, I was terrified of the how my family will react, how the community and the culture will react, what kind of hate I would get. And yes, I did get all of those things, but I also got a tremendous amount of love and support. And this is why I'm sitting in front of you here today, right? So again, I was afraid, yes, but I chose to do it anyway because I believed in it. And I knew that my story wasn't just my story. My story is the story of millions and millions of women and girls around the world who continue to suffer in silence. And I wanted to break the silence for those millions of silences that need to be broken. And I knew that my first thing would be to just speak up, and then things evolved from there. So not that I wasn't afraid of doing it, I wasn't fearless, but I was courageous. So there's the distinction, I think, between being fearless and being brave and courageous. And I think as women, we should move towards being brave and courageous, because yes, we will feel afraid, but we don't have to let that fear hold us back from doing things that are right for us and that are going to propel us forward.
Wow, that's just brilliant. And I think you've just brought so many issues up. You've talked about the logistical issues, you've talked about the honor part of it, you've talked about having to deal with a lot of other factors which women are rightly afraid of facing when they leave a marriage, or when they choose not to be married. In fact, we have a question from the audience, and we also have a comment here. It's the courage to face difficult situations that makes your destiny. Fear is natural, totally agree. And before that, Pragya had asked that a lot of, do you think our media is also responsible in creating these mindsets that marriage is a woman's ultimate destiny? When we see all these TV shows and a lot of
Oh my
movies.
God. Don't even get me started on that. I get so cringy. And, so I have an esthetician here in Toronto who I go to every, just to get my ladies' work done. And then, she always has these Pakistani dramas playing on her TV. And as I'm getting my nails done, or, like my hair and other stuff, so she's like, she has these dramas playing, and every single one of them is somehow around marriage, around like marriageability, around some rishta, around some, just it's all love triangles, and somebody's cheating on somebody, and this idea of honor, and like it just makes me want to explode. I'm like, is that all a woman is for? Like, is that all there is? Where are those dramas and those shows where they see women starting businesses, or are going and pursuing academics, and kicking ass in their careers, and championing their individuality, or speaking up for different causes, or just being who they are as individuals, and practicing their human and fundamental human legal rights? Where are those aspirational kind of female role models? So our media is always just revolving around the same topics of like family politics, and like hanging on to this guy or that guy, and as if like our entire life is driven by a competition of who's going to marry the best sort of, and the best match or whatever, and like as if like this is all that completes us and all that defines us. It just makes me want to explode. I'm like, who is writing these things?
Would you like to add to that, Dolly? You've been part of very iconic performances like with the vagina monologues. So would you like to add to the other side of the media?
We are talking about a middle class and an educated class of society, and but there is almost 75% of my country which is not does not belong to that class, and the kind of reports that are coming out in the newspapers these days, I don't know why men rape so much. I don't, I mean, the young girls of 8 and 6 are being accosted on the streets and being raped in the villages. I mean, it's mind-boggling as to what's happened to our people. Where, and yet we are people who believe in temples and prayers and mosques, and yet this is what is happening on the streets. What is happening in society? I am also a national coordinator for the Ladli Girl Child campaign, so I'm faced with a lot of those. And just because my life has been sense successful, and I've been able to face all the handicaps and obstacles that were faced in my way, doesn't mean that it is the same for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I weep for them. My heart weeps for them. And how much can you do for them? I mean, if the police, you can't rely on them. The government, you can't rely on them. I mean, there was a time when in society you could look up to somebody and think that you were safer believing in them. But today the world has changed, and society has changed. And where has
Well,
education gone? Where has it taken them? It hasn't. What has it taught them? Just to become engineers and business management heads, and it's,
so
as I said,
what's
it
your
is my.
last word of advice, Dolly, that you'd like to share?
I would say courage, and face whatever, and don't be embarrassed. If somebody is teasing you, somebody is harassing you, please face up to the fact and go and tell somebody. I know that by saying that you can't even go and report it to the police, you can't even go and report it to a hospital, but the fact that you are, as Samra uses the word, fearless. um, I don't think it requires you to have courage in yourself, and have a belief in yourself, and stand
Absolutely.
up to it, and tell people that this is what has happened, and this is how, and go ahead and overcome it. It's all in your hands. I would really say that it's up to the
Yeah.
women to face up to whatever handicaps they've had to face. There are plenty, there are lots of obstacles in the way, and they will continue to be. But the more women like Samra or me speak up, and the more we can pass our messages on, I'm sure it will give people courage, and it will give them some uh, strength to face up to what life has to offer. I know
Absolutely.
everybody wants a better life. I know everybody wants a bigger house. Everybody wants a bigger car. Everybody wants a better education. And if you, that doesn't mean that because some things happen in your life which takes away that portion of your advantages, that that's the end of the world. It's not. I don't have a 17-foot car, or I live in a 17th floor building. I don't, or I own an aircraft, or I walk around with a 5 lakh handbag. There's none of that. But I am I, and I want all women to be like
Great. So we should have the conviction in ourselves to live the life the way that we want. And yeah, thank you both for being who you are and for the courage that you've displayed and the courage that you're sharing with other women. And I'm very, regretful that we couldn't hear Deep's story because it's really very powerful. Her experiences have been very powerful, and also what she's faced in her personal life has given her so much strength for dealing with much larger issues of dealing with extremists and with the militia, and a lot of that comes from taking that courage in her own personal life. And if you can face up to, I think, your family and society, I think the world to choti si cheez ho jati hai, the world becomes a small thing, because you face that bigger world, which is your intimate world. So I think a lot of these things cannot be, we can talk about it, we can share it, and the more we share it, we give courage to other women to live their truth and to share their stories as well. So it's important. And but at the same time, I would say that unless you've kind of taken that step yourself, we have that song, right? Aag ka darya doob ke jana. So I think unless you don't go through that the fire yourself, it's difficult to kind of explain the what the experience is actually all about. But thank you both for being here. We've greatly exceeded our time limit because the conversation was so interesting and I didn't want to stop. So thank you both for being here. I'm so honored that you're here. Yeah, Dolly, you want to say something?
I want to say, is there a feedback from the people that have listened?
Yeah.
Will you be receiving that, and can you share that with us
Yes,
as and
sure.
when
I
you get
have been actually, I've been sharing it on the screen as the comments have been
it?
coming. But yeah, they will
Well,
be
how do
live.
you,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of them
If the,
hesitate to put it on screen, but
yeah.
because you're running this whole organization, if you do get letters, if you do get
Oh,
feedback,
yes. Oh,
we'd
yes.
love to
Yes,
know
yes.
what
Absolutely.
impact we have had on them.
Absolutely.
You know,
I
whether
will
they
be sure to
condemn us
forward
or
it
And
to you.
I
accept it or,
and
I
I
don't think
would also
anybody would
tell
condemn
them.
you.
I think
sorry.
also I would like to also just tell everybody, please stay in touch, even individually. I'm very approachable on social media, so you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, my website, anywhere. So I love hearing from readers, and so if you want to write to me directly, please by all means do, and I will absolutely read it and respond.
Yes, she's very approachable, and I vouch for that. So, so thank you both of you for being here, and good night, and be safe and
Good
take
night.
care. Thank you, everybody else, for watching South Asia Union Summit led by women. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. India time for another full day of a lot of invigorating sessions coming up tomorrow. So, thank you and good night. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ekta, and congratulations, and thank you for
Good
doing
night.
this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Akhtar. Thank you for inviting me.